blonde hair. The American ambassador's wife dubbed him Brillo Top. His face had an Irish lilt, with its finely sculpted jaw and cheekbones, thin, sensual lips, and cornflower blue eyes. And he was, oh, so thin. When seated at the piano, he looked like a pea-pod with great Jack the Giant Killer hands, said one of his managers, Schuyler Chapin. Critic Winthrop Sargent described the pianist's fingers as a bunch of asparagus. Neither image sounded especially lovely, though each framed him as a force of nature. Nevertheless, remembered Max Frankel, then in Moscow as a correspondent for the New York Times, young Russian girls were swooning. Women of a certain age wanted to adopt him. Their daughters had other designs. His admirers in the concert hall and those who heard him over the radio or saw him on television were hooked almost from the moment the 23-year-old first appeared on the stage. But it wasn't the music alone that drew them. His southern charm was as thick as gravy on fresh biscuits as he greeted his new fans with the prim decorousness of a proper East Texas gentleman, unfailingly gracious at every turn. The Russian public had embraced virtuosos before, but Van was a different sort. He showed none of the brooding intensity of Sviatoslav Richter or the demonic sparks of Vladimir Horowitz. The ground and the walls didn't shake when he performed, as they had seemed to for Anton Rubinstein. He simply played like an angel. Muscovites surrendered their hearts to him. Even his odd mannerisms were inexplicably endearing, like the way he casually furrowed his brow when speaking, suggesting a sort of backwoods Clark Gable, or his habit of looking upward when he played, as if communing with the heavens whenever the music reached an emotional peak, while his lips formed a nearly perpetual pucker from the lifesavers he routinely kept in his mouth. Two of the competition's most celebrated jury members, pianists Lev Oborin and Heinrich Neuhaus, debated those head motions. "Why does he do that?" asked Oborin disapprovingly. "He's conversing with God," replied Neuhaus. "That was a gift not given to us." Broadcasts of the competition were so popular that the streets were often empty when the pianists were performing. Listening became a collective rite, binding enthusiasts together into what one prominent Russian music critic called a national vieche, the equivalent of a medieval popular assembly. Those admirers created so strong a ballast against possible Kremlin tampering with the jury vote that it was said years later by critic Tamara Grum-Gzhimailo that the seeds of perestroika were first planted in this moment during the Tchaikovsky competition. Some in the Kremlin, of course, resisted the Americans' coronation, dreading a Cold War defeat. Yet Van's appeal was hardly political. It was personal. He had the uncanny ability to melt nearly anyone's self-reserve. He had always worn his heart on his sleeve, and though hard-nosed friends in New York often snickered at his overwrought sentimentality, the Russians responded in kind. Van's deep-seated humility made his magnetism, even his exaggerated emotions, feel trustworthy. Below the surface, a more complex dynamic was in play. Raised in the genteel hothouse of an East Texas culture where people are taught to keep their inner demons well buried, Cliburn was less simple than he seemed, yet he projected a kind of spiritual purity, not in the sense of his having rejected earthly temptations, far from it, but through an aura of plain, unsullied decency. His pianism shared many of the same qualities. He sat regally erect at the instrument, like a king on his throne, not unlike the great 19th century pianist Sigismund Thalberg, who had allegedly developed his posture by smoking a Turkish pipe while practicing. But his tone, like his character, was warm and entrancing, a magnolia blossom sound, as one Texas patron described it. His hands could swallow large portions of the keyboard in a single swoop, and through them the music flowed as naturally as a spring breeze, its surges and taperings artfully measured, gently gusting with a pulse that was both sure-footed and elastic. And somehow, it all sounded confessional. Whether he was performing Bach or Rachmaninoff, the piano seemed to be